of England. And again, temperatures probably going to be sitting around 11 to 13 Celsius. Sophie.
Darren, thank you. And that's it from the BBC News at 6. It's time now for the news where you are. Goodbye.
Thank you, Sophie. Hello, you're watching Wales Today. I'm Jennifer Jones with the headlines. It's the UK's biggest steelworks, but unions claim Tata was planning to close both blast furnaces at its site in Talbot, with the loss of thousands of jobs.
No statement from Tata today giving details of how it plans to decarbonise the plant here at Port Talbot, but that means 4,000 workers at the site remain in uncertainty.
Also tonight, the preparations to try to minimise the impact of potential flooding. One warning is in place where it could pose a risk to life.
What started as just a mass of cloud earlier on in the Atlantic has now explosively deepened into what is Storm Kieran. Later on, I'll let you know what this storm means for Wales and the weather warnings associated with it.
We'll hear from Rita Riddle, who's among 70 residents moved from a care home in Kimler that's lost its funding.
We got so used to everybody. You know, it's like family, losing your family.
And it's an iconic Welsh promenade, but we find out what people think of proposals to charge for parking on Aberystwyth Prom. Good evening, Noswaith. It's been a chaotic day at the UK's biggest steel plant after Tata pulled an expected announcement over the future of the plant. Unions claimed that both blast furnaces were going to be shut down by next March, with a loss of up to 3,000 jobs. The announcement was supposed to give the details of how Tata plans to reduce carbon emissions at Talbot. Well, our money editor, Felicity Evans, is there. And Fliss, it's been a very strange day.
A very strange day indeed, that's right. We were expecting details of how Tata was going to implement a decarbonisation plant here. We've known for a long time that if the Port Talbot steelmaking plant is to survive, then carbon emissions must be reduced. As things stand, it is a very, very big carbon emitter. Now, the UK government gave Tata £500 million back in September to help towards this process, and an electric arc furnace is planned for this site, which does produce a lot less carbon than the traditional blast furnaces behind me, but also requires far fewer workers. Today, we were expecting to hear things like timetables and how many jobs might need to be lost, and then suddenly we were told that no plan would be forthcoming after a union backlash. The uncertainty hanging over workers at the UK's biggest steel plant came into sharp focus today. Owners Tata were planning to announce the details of their plan to make greener steel here, a plan that could cost thousands of jobs. But after a ferocious response by the steel unions, Tata hit the pause button. The unions claimed that Tata was planning to shut down heavy-end production here. That means closing both blast furnaces and the coking ovens and leaving only the rolling steel mill functioning, while a less polluting electric arc furnace was built. They called on the company to pull back from the brink or face a collision course. Whatever the reason, the Tata board, which was meeting in the Indian city of Mumbai, chose not to make the announcement today. The unions are pleased.
Our statement was on the back of an announcement we thought was coming, which was pulled at the last minute. And, well, it hasn't happened, so that is a plus. Decarbonisation has to happen, right? We can't get away from that. The unions, all three unions involved with Tata, know that. But what I would say is, like we've always said, there needs to be a just transition over a period of time.
But the uncertainty continues for the 4,000 workers and their town.
Everybody you know got people, family, friends, relatives working in the steelworks.
You know, and it is frightening because we don't know what will happen, because we do have a lot of workmen, contractors from Tata, we have people from the offices, and Friday's their treat day, and that's the majority of the time when they all come. So, yeah, it's frightening.
I'm hoping that it doesn't happen, because they've said it so many times in the past. It's like a sort of scaremongering, but I hope it is again.
The UK government recently gave Tata £500 million to secure the future of the site and change the way they make steel here, moving away from the traditional polluting blast furnaces to cleaner electric arc furnaces. But that means fewer workers and giving up on making virgin steel. The local MP insists there are alternatives.
So there is a plan which the trade unions and their expert consultants have been working on. And it's a plan which is about building a bold, viable, strong future for the Port Talbot Steelworks, not a future that's based on managed decline, which is, I'm afraid, the deal that the United Kingdom government and Tata Steel seem to have been pushing. But as I said, very good that they've been brought back from the brink today.
Tata says it's committed to a greener future for this plant and to a meaningful consultation for the unions. Whatever their plan, there'll likely be some difficult conversations ahead. Well, within the last few minutes, we've had a fresh statement from Tata, and a spokesperson has said, despite today's press commentary, we are not in a position to make a formal announcement about any proposals for a transition to decarbonised future for Tata Steel UK, and they go on to say they hope to start that formal process very soon. But there is no question that the unions certainly were expecting that statement today after a briefing this morning, and they had a great deal of detail about what they were expecting the company to announce. The unions, while they accept that decarbonisation has to take place at Port Talbot, they say they want that to be a transition that takes place over a period of time and winds down the existing blast furnaces rather than something that comes to a complete shut-off and does something to protect the jobs. So the discussions will continue.
Indeed. Felicity, thank you. That's Felicity Evans at Port Talbot for us this evening. A caravan park in Tenby has closed temporarily, with guests evacuated after a severe flood warning, which says there could be a significant risk to life at high tides. Heavy rain and strong winds are forecast as Storm Kieran hits Wales this evening. A Met Office rain warning covers the whole of Wales until tomorrow night, with the worst of the winds due to affect South and West Wales. Stephen Fairclough has the latest.
Is this a sign of things to come? Sharp rain showers set to intensify as Storm Kieran approaches. This caravan park in Tenby evacuated when it became flooded. Guests asked to leave as a severe flood warning, meaning a risk to life was imposed. Elsewhere, yellow warnings for rain and wind across much of the country. In Carmarthenshire, Natural Resources Wales are checking flood defences and warning people to be prepared when faced with extreme weather.
Well, there's a chance the Storm Kieran will bring heavy rainfall and prolonged rainfall throughout Wales, we are carrying out our preparations as we usually do, checking our defences. We are monitoring water levels and making sure that we've got the resources that we need to manage our way through the storm. We've got a number of sites across Wales where we've got response plans, and we'll be keeping a close eye on those, on the river levels associated with those.
Rivers are already running fast and full in many parts of Wales after recent rain has left the ground saturated. The advice is to stay away from any fast-moving water, still floodwater, and the sea.
Although it might seem appealing to go out and experience the weather, the extremely high winds forecasted mean that we strongly advise people against doing so. Most parts of the coast, the waves will be significantly higher than normal, and that can mean that areas of beach or even areas of promenade or walkways near the seafront, exposed cliffs, walkways, piers, can be overtopped by waves or can be covered by water in a way that they wouldn't do. And we see during storm conditions that regularly catching people out if they're not prepared for it.
Here in Pontypridd, which was badly affected by flooding in 2020, there have been some pretty strong downpours of rain today, and the river is running fast. But it is nowhere near bursting its banks at the moment, and there have been significant improvements in flood defences in the last 3 years. Even so, those people who were affected back in 2020 are still nervously looking at the river levels as Storm Kieran approaches. Stephen Fairclough, BBC Wales Today, Pontypridd.
And we'll have a full forecast with Sabrina at the end of the programme. A coroner has written to ministers urging action on internet forums which promote suicide following the death of a student nurse in Cardiff. Bronwyn Morgan died after researching suicide methods online. The coroner's report comes on the day leading UK broadband providers have blocked access to One website. Well, David Grundy is in the newsroom with more details for us. And David, this is a tragic case.
Yeah, Jen, it really is. Now, Bronwyn Morgan, who was 26, was a student nurse at Cardiff University. She's been described by her family as bright and beautiful. She'd been diagnosed, though, with what's called an emotionally unstable personality disorder. And in August 2020, she took her own life. Now, at her inquest, the coroner was told that in the days leading up to her death, she had complained to Cardiff and Vale Health Board about her package of care. Now, the coroner, Graham Hughes, found that her death and the care she was receiving were not linked. He concluded that her death was suicide, and he said that keeping her safe had been a challenge for her family and mental health services. Today, though, he's issued what's called a Prevention of Future Deaths report, and he's urging action from ministers on internet forums that promote suicide and give advice on methods.
So, David, what does this report that you've just mentioned, what does it mean?
Well, during the inquest, there was evidence that Bronwyn had researched suicide methods on an online forum. The coroner said she'd used it to discuss and seek advice from fellow users about methods of self-harm and suicide, including the method she used to end her own life. So he's written and sent this report to Wales's Health Minister Eluned Morgan and the UK's Media Secretary Lucy Fraser, asking them to consider what can be done to limit access to those websites. It means they both have 56 days, so up until the 20th of December, to respond. Now, his report has been published on the same day that several major UK broadband companies have announced that they've blocked access to one specific website that promotes suicide. Now, on top of that, the regulator Ofcom, which got new powers under the Online Safety Bill, which became law last week, says if services don't comply, it has a broad range of enforcement powers, Jen.
OK, David, thank you very much. David Grundy there. And if you've been affected by anything raised in David's report, advice and support is available on the BBC Action Line website. Parents are being urged to ensure their children are up to date with the MMR vaccine following an outbreak of measles in Cardiff. 7 children have been confirmed to have the infection in the last 6 weeks. Symptoms include a red or brown rash. Public Health Wales says it's working with Cardiff and Vale University Health Board to ensure contact tracing has taken place.
MMR vaccination consists of a 2-course vaccine. The first dose is given just after the first birthday, and the second one is given just in the preschool period, just after the 3rd birthday. So those who have missed the vaccine for whatever reason, at that appropriate time, it is still not too late. They can go and seek their vaccination with their usual care providers.
A woman who intervened in an armed attack in the Rhondda in 2020 has been honoured with a Queen's Gallantry Medal. Ayet Bounuri intervened when a woman with a knife threatened people at the co-op in Penygraig. 88-year-old John Rees was killed in the attack. An elderly woman who was moved from her care home near Neath says its closure is like losing family. Neath Talbot Council terminated its contract with the Hollins Care Centre in Kimler, giving 90 days notice. The council said required standards had not been met. Here's our Swansea reporter, Amy Thomas.
Reluctantly leaving the place she calls home. 75-year-old Rita Riddell has been living at Hollins Care Centre in Kimler with her husband Brian for the past year.
We're all upset about it, every one of us.
And when did you find out that you'd have to move?
Last Monday. We got so used to everybody. You know, it's like family, losing your family.
Neath Talbot Council, which are responsible for placing people at the care home, says it recently became aware of concerns relating to the care given. Concerns including low staffing levels, poor hygiene and infection control, and medication management. But Director Ben disagrees.
We've been inspected by Care Inspector at Wales back in August. It was a positive inspection report. So I just don't believe these things have occurred in 5 weeks since we had a good inspection report.
BBC Wales has spoken to a number of relatives about the closure. Some said there were issues with the care given, while others were very pleased. Without funding from the council, Hollins Care Centre says it's financially impossible to keep the home open. One staff member, who's now facing redundancy, says the news came as a shock to everyone.
With regards to the care for these residents, we feel we've given the best care possible. But from what we've heard, the standards of care aren't up to standard. We feel that's a kick in the guts for us as carers, that we're not doing the job we are supposed to be doing correctly.
In a joint statement with Swansea Bay Health Board, the council says the welfare and well-being of care home residents are of paramount importance. It said when the council commissions placements at privately managed care homes, they carry out regular reviews to ensure standards are met. It added, as a last resort, when it's found the standards aren't being met, action is taken to safeguard the residents. It said it's working with the Health Board to relocate residents over the coming weeks and months. The loss of a home to many. But Hollins Care Centre says there is hope the care home will be taken over by new owners in the future, and the council says it's responded to a number of inquiries regarding the purchase of the home.
Amy Thomas reporting there. Still to come in the programme. It's a dock from where slate was shipped abroad. Now locals aim to raise £300,000 to purchase the harbour and marina in a Felinheli. And a squad reshuffle ahead of Wales's final WXV match against Australia, with 6 changes to the team that suffered a heavy defeat to New Zealand. Well, to Ceredigion next, where councillors are considering proposals to charge for parking along the promenade in Aberystwyth. The plans are dividing opinion there, as David Morgan has been finding out.
The climb up Constitution Hill, a walk across the beach or heading to the pier. There are many reasons to visit the prom in Aberystwyth. But where to park? It's a question many people ask when visiting the town. And the number of free parking spaces could be reduced as the County Council consider charging to park on the prom. It's a proposal that, according to some businesses, could have an effect on the number of customers that spend their money here.
I already have to lose members of staff every now and again to go and move up a car because they've only got an hour spot or a 2-hour spot. You know, is charging them to park outside the place of work, is that fair? We have people that come to me on a daily basis just for a quick cup of coffee. We have people that come in weekly for a bite to eat, and we have people that come in for a special occasion, you know. For them at the moment, it's a struggle for them to find somewhere to park as it is. You know, charging somebody on top of that, is that going to be a reason for them not to come to this part of town?
Currently, you can park completely free of charge along Aberystwyth Promenade. Some places for 1 hour, some spaces for 2 hours. The main concern with charging for parking is that local residents will be most affected.
Any proposals for charging on the prom have to be in the context of free permits for local residents, as well as an overall review of the parking situation in the town as a whole. Having said that, it's not a crazy idea, or at least seasonal charging.
For those trying to attract overnight visitors to Aber, charging for parking on the front won't have that big an impact.
Tourists and the quality tourists we're trying to attract to Aberystwyth are willing to pay. They go all over Britain and they pay for parking in locations like Aberystwyth, so no real impact on quality tourism.
Yeah, well, I think it's ridiculous. I don't think they should do it. You know, they're cutting back on everything. We pay enough rates.
I mean, as a tourist, it's always a bad idea because, you know, I want to be able to come and park here and walk along the seafront. This is like an iconic seafront, and I want to come back here and enjoy it. But, yeah, they've got to generate some money, I suppose, but there must be other ways. I mean, is it really going to generate that much money?
I think it's more of a shame for local people. I think if you're coming to visit, people possibly expect to pay, yeah. But it must be an absolute nightmare living around here and parking.
Ceredigion Council didn't want to make a comment before a further discussion on the options of charging to park on the prom, an issue which has certainly split opinion.
Well, residents of a village on the Menai Strait are trying to raise enough money to buy their local marina. A community enterprise has been set up in Aberystwyth, aiming to raise £300,000 in just 1 month. If they succeed, they say it will keep profits from the marina in the community, as Chris Dearden has been finding out.
Stormy waters and troubled times. The company which owns the marina here in Aberystwyth went into administration in June this year. It's caused uncertainty for staff and boat owners, but others in the area saw it as an opportunity. Why shouldn't the local community buy the marina and run it themselves?
There's so much symbolism involved in this harbour. Ever since it was built, it was for extracting wealth from Wales, from this part of Wales, and shipping it off to all parts of the world. So for the first time in its history, we want to change that. We want to bring the wealth into the port and keep it here. And I think that's hugely important.
This harbour has certainly generated plenty of money over the years. Also known in the past as Port de Norwich, it started out exporting slate from the quarries in nearby Llanberis. It became part of a marina in the 1980s. But before the community enterprise can buy it, they need to raise the money. That means grant applications and an appeal to sell £300,000 of shares.
You've got two communities living side by side at the moment, to a large extent. I mean, there is some crossover, but I think one of the intentions that we've got is to reconnect the marina with the community in the village and reconnect the marina with its past and with its heritage.
And before any of those connections can be made, there's a deadline. The community enterprise has just 30 days until the end of this month to sell enough shares. After a few hours, the total now stands at £12,000. The directors say it's a good start, but still a long way to go.
Chris Dearden reporting from Aberystwyth. A 16th century astronomy book written by a Welsh mathematician has sold at auction for £10,000. The Castle of Knowledge, published in 1556, was written by Tenby-born Robert Record, who is also credited with introducing the equals sign. Auctioneers said the book was very rare and well preserved, despite a few pages being lost over time. Well, to New Zealand now, where Wales's women have named their team for their final WXV match. They take on Australia on Friday, and they're looking to finish their campaign with a win. They are currently bottom of the Tier 1 table after 2 heavy defeats against Canada and New Zealand. From Auckland, here's Kerry Coleman-Phillips.
Head coach Johan Cunningham has shuffled his squad once again. He's made 6 changes from the side that lost 70 points to 7 against New Zealand last weekend. With a focus on physicality, they've brought Lisa Neumann and Caris Cox back on the wings. And then in the pack, Caris Phillips, Cecilia Tuipulotu, Georgia Evans and Bethan Lewis all return. If you look at the results, it's been a disappointing campaign for Wales so far, but they've got one more chance on Friday morning when they line up against the Wallaroos.
It's a learning curve for us. Obviously, we deserve to be here, and it's a fast learning curve going into this weekend. And, you know, Australia closely ranked to us, they're 5th, so they're one above us, and it's going to be a much better game to hopefully get a performance. If you dwell on the past, you know, it's just going to be brought into the next game, so it's a mindset thing. You've got to park it, you've got to learn from it, and you've got to pick yourself up for the next game.
We can't go into this game thinking it's going to be easy. We know it's going to be challenging, but I think what's important is to take each game as sort of a standalone game. You know, we can't just expect to, you know, if we go from them, you know, obviously winning against France, you know, we can't just expect that we're going to lose. There's a lot of belief in the squad, and I think, you know, from the last 2 games, we are disappointed as a team. You know we can give more and do better, so it's a good opportunity now to actually put that into practice.
It all comes down to this for Wales. They were under no illusion of just how difficult it would be to take on the world's top teams. They've suffered 2 heavy defeats so far, so they will really be targeting Australia on Friday. It's another team they've never beaten before, and they would love to have a win under their belts before they make the long journey home. Kerry Coleman-Phillips, BBC Wales Today in Auckland.
And good luck to them on Friday. Well, let's get the weather forecast now. Sabrina, what's it looking like with Storm Kieran?
Hi, Jen. Well, I just checked the recent satellite imagery. We can see that the storm is just offshore. The main rain band will approach some southern areas in the next hour or so. It does look like the storm could bring some damage and disruption to places too, our third storm of the season. So this morning then, the storm was just an area of cloud, but since then it's deepened rapidly, and now you can see the rotation on it. That's what's been going on over the last few hours, and that will be heading our way very shortly. On top of that, we can have a little look at the jet stream, which gives an idea of what's going on at the moment. So this is pushing westwards to eastwards. That has been allowing for some quicker flights, those transatlantic ones, but also that's aided in the development of that storm. So in terms of the warnings then, we have a widespread rain warning quite widely within this area. We could see around 20 to 30 millimetres of rainfall, and in some spots there's going to be double that, not exclusively to higher ground. I think some parts of North Wales on a more localised scale could see in excess of 100 millimetres of rainfall by the end of the period. This rain warning has already started. On top of that, then we have this wind warning. So the strongest winds at the moment look to be in parts of the south, but particularly the southwest. So yesterday, Pembrokeshire was in a small amber wind warning. That has since been removed. But when you do see gusts this high, these could indeed cause some damage. And on top of that, you could see some large waves. There could also be some power cuts. Outside of this warning region, we could still see some strong gusty winds in places. And also, if you look at the shipping forecast, we do have some violent winds expected at times. So into the forecast then, whilst that band of rain is offshore, it's going to arrive shortly into some southern areas, and then that's just going to push across the country as we spread through this evening. Some of that will be on the heavy side. It's just going to pivot around too, so there will be some drier gaps. But where we do catch some of these intense spells, there could be some thundery downpours mixed in. Some strong to gale force winds in places too, mainly exposed locations. And those temperatures dipping away then to around 7 to 9 Celsius. Into tomorrow then, that rain will continue its journey across the country. So in some places this will be pretty persistent, especially parts of North Wales where we expect the highest rainfall totals. Some bright or sunny spells possible at times too, but we do have those strong gusty winds to deal with. Some gale force winds possible, especially in parts of the southwest, which is where we expect those strongest winds at the moment. Top temperatures, nothing too impressive, 9 to 11 Celsius. So on Thursday night then, that storm continuing to bring some showery rain, but it will clear away through the early hours of Friday morning as it heads through the North Sea. With that, those winds will start to moderate. So the storm then clears off into the North Sea. Behind that, a little bit of a break before more low pressure pushes in through this weekend, and that's going to bring some further unsettled conditions. So the forecast for Friday then, we're going to see more in the way of this northwesterly breeze pushing in some showers, some of which could be on the thundery side. Quite breezy, but not as windy as it has been. And then looking at the outlook, as you can see, it looks pretty unsettled. That's your forecast, Jen.
Sabrina, thank you very much for that. And a reminder of our top story before we go. Unions have claimed Tata Steel was planning to close the bulk of its operation at the UK's biggest steelworks in Talbot. Tata have said this evening they're not in a position to make a formal announcement about any proposals. And that is Wales Today. We'll be back with our late update after the news at 10. But until then, have a good evening. Goodbye. Hyfryd.
Croeso I Dros Brecwast.
Gyda'r newyddion yn bwysicach nag erioed, i ni yma i chi ar ddechrau'r diwrnod, gyda'r penawdau sy'n berthnasol i chi.
Gallwn ni fynd draw nawr i gael y diweddara yn fyw.
Wel, ar draws Cymru, mae yna gannoedd o ysgolion ar gau heddi.
Le bynnag mae'r stori, mi fyddwn ni yno, yn mynnu atebion am y pethau sy'n effeithio arnoch chi.
Dyma'r lle am y diweddara o Gymru a'r byd.
Deffro'r genedl dros Brecwast ar BBC Radio Cymru. Gwrandewch ar Sounds.
This is the story of a boatload of drugs.
Are you telling me you can't use a few million quid?
You better tread careful, you two. It belongs to someone.
He's the tailor. He's just called the tailor.
Do you think I look like a drug dealer?
Well, you don't not look like a drug dealer.
Boat Story. Coming soon to BBC One and iPlayer.
Shemai, hello and welcome to BBC One Wales. Chaos at the cafe in EastEnders at the slightly later time of 7:45 this evening. And that's because Beatlemania takes over now as we come together for a very special One show.
Hello
Hello there and welcome to The One Show, live on BBC One and iPlayer with Ronan Keating.
And Alex Jones, and we have a very special One Show tonight. We've even extended it because we've got something extraordinary to show you. 2 words, the Beatles. We'll tell you all about it in a moment.
But first, it wouldn't be Wednesday without Watchdog getting its teeth into something, and Matt...